Hello guys, in this video we're going to have a look at using the BSP brush, also known as the binary space partition brush, which is this red wireframe cube that you find in the center of your level every time you make a new level. Now to demonstrate this one, I'm going to make a blank map, so I'm just going to go up to create new level and select blank map. Don't need to save that. And we have our binary space partition brush right in the center of our map to use. Okay, so you can change the shape of this brush here, and if you come over to the left hand side you can see you've got brushes, and the brush can be changed to a cone or a curved staircase, a cylinder, and various other shapes, but we're just going to stick to the cube for now. I can change the size of this cube by right clicking on the cube brush icon on the left hand side here, and that's going to open up the builder brush properties, and I can type numbers into the X, the Y, and the Z, so I can change the X to 512, I could change the Y to 1024, and you can see the size of the brush is actually changing, but we're going to leave it at 256 by 256 by 256 just for this demonstration, and I'm going to click cancel to close that window down. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this brush to create some constructive solid geometry, and this is geometry that the player can interact with in the level. They can bump into it and shoot it and so on and so forth. So to do that, I'm going to come over to the left hand side here where I've got CSG, which stands for constructive solid geometry, and the only two buttons that we're going to use for this tutorial are these two right here. The first one is CSG add to add some geometry, and then we've got CSG subtract to delete some geometry. Okay, so I'm going to use the CSG add. The control shortcut for that is Control and A. Sorry, the keyboard shortcut for that is Control and A. But I'm just going to press the button for now. So I click the button and we've added some geometry. And the geometry's gone inside the area that was defined by our binary space partition brush. Alright, great. So we've added some geometry. Now I'm just going to move the builder brush along a little bit, and I'm going to raise it up. And I'm going to click the CSG subtract button. And when we do that, we've kind of cut out an area from the geometry that we've created. Now, if we just go up here, and we're going to change our view mode to brush wireframe, and I'm going to move the BSP brush out of the way. So what we've got here is we've got the blue additive brush and the yellow subtractive brush. And the combination of these two brushes together is the geometry that we see right in front of us. So we've got the blue brush that added the geometry in the first place, and then we've got the yellow brush that intersects with the add brush, which then subtracts the geometry that we created. And this is the result that we have. And this is the geometry that the player can interact with, shoot, and bump into, and so on and so forth. Now you will notice that you can't actually move this geometry, and I'm going to explain that to you now. So we're just going to go back to our brush wireframe mode, and we're going to see what happens if I do move this subtraction brush. So I'm going to move the brush over and up again, and then we're going to go back to our unlit mode, and you can see nothing's happened, and nothing will happen until we click this button up here, which is to build the geometry or rebuild the geometry. So I'm going to click on that button right there. UDK rebuilds the geometry. We don't need to worry about the warnings and errors here. If we close that down, you can see what's happened. It's actually updated the geometry based on the new positions of our add brush and our subtract brush. So now we'll have a look and we'll see what happens when I actually delete this subtraction brush altogether. Bearing in mind that this is what we've got at the moment. We've got this little bit of geometry with a tiny little corner carved out of the side there. So if we go back to the brush wireframe and I delete the subtract brush, and then we go back to the unlit mode, you can see we've still got our bit of geometry with the little bit of the corner carved out until, of course, we rebuild our geometry. And once that's done, we've got a whole cube again, and that's because we don't have the subtraction brush anymore cutting out the corner. Now, if you want to move your geometry, we'll go back to unlit mode. You can't, like I said before, you can't actually select the geometry itself. So what you need to do is, if we go back to brush wireframe, we'll select the brush and go back to lit mode. And I'm going to move the brush along, and you can see that the geometry hasn't moved yet. We need to rebuild our geometry. And when we do that, UDK will rebuild the geometry, and the position of that geometry will update according to where we've moved our brush. So I'll just do that again. I'll move the brush up in the air, close this down. I'm going to rebuild the geometry, and you can see that the geometry's jumped to where we moved our brush. So that's the kind of basics behind the BSP brush for adding and subtracting. There's a couple of things that we do need to just quickly recap. So BSP does stand for binary space partition, and CSG stands for constructive solid geometry. UDK will generate the CSG using the BSP brushes that we place in our level. The CSG can't be moved. We must move the BSP brushes in order to move the geometry. If we do move our BSP brush or change it in any way, we must rebuild the geometry using the rebuild geometry button at the top of the screen. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to use the BSP brush to create rooms inside of your levels. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.